What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily. So it's been about 6 months already since the launch of the iPhone 13 lineup, if you can believe that. We're halfway through the product cycle. And I've been using the iPhone 13 Pro pretty much as my primary daily driver that whole time, when I'm not testing and reviewing other devices. I'm generally an iPhone user. That's what I prefer day to day, but the iPhone is not a perfect phone by any means. The iPhone 13 Pro, I think, is the best iPhone ever, but that's a given. It's the newest, most powerful, most feature-packed, so it should be. But like I said, it's not perfect, and over these last 6 months, I've had plenty of good experiences, but a little bit of bad mixed in too with the iPhone 13 Pro. So in this video, I'm gonna fill you in on everything there is to know about using this phone. I'll tell you what I like, what this phone does best in my opinion, and the handful of gripes I have and suggestions for the iPhone 14, which we somehow already have rumors for. Now, right off the bat, it's no secret that the iPhone's core design hasn't changed much really in the last 4 or 5 years. This iPhone 13 Pro looks pretty much the same as the original iPhone 10. And when you compare how an iPhone looks to really any other device, it definitely looks dated. That notch has got to go. Sure, it's gotten a little smaller. I still have an iPhone 12 screen protector on here so you can just see how much smaller the smaller notch is. It's obviously just not. And beyond that, the screen is still surrounded by relatively thick borders by today's standards. So to me, the iPhone just isn't as maybe pretty or as modern as it once was. The thing is though, I think that's kind of the point. Everyone knows what an iPhone looks like. The notch is iconic, for better or for worse. You can tell an iPhone apart from any other smartphone, just with like a rough outline or a cartoon picture. You can't really do that with any other phone. And given the fact that even the newest MacBooks are rocking a notch now, I don't doubt that this is a purposeful design choice made to be recognizable. And obviously, it also serves a purpose too. Face ID has always been a standout feature for its security and accuracy and integration with payments and third-party apps, but no, it's not always convenient. And in fact, I'd say it's even been a detriment to my smartphone experience given the last 2 years of mask wearing, since there's no other biometric unlocking method. Seriously, just put a fingerprint sensor on the power button. But all in all, when you see the sleek, modern, notchless design of those other phones before picking up a notched iPhone, you do get a little jealous. Still, there are some other design elements with the iPhone 13 Pro that are very positive. For me, the size of the iPhone 13 Pro in particular is perfect. 6.1 inches is small-ish by today's standards, but big enough to still feel engulfed by a YouTube video or Twitter feed. And most importantly, it's super comfortable for one-handed use. And this size, to me, has been the perfect balance. Apple has also never compromised on materials, and this phone, with its stainless steel frame and frosted glass cover, looks and feels ultra premium, as it should. This is not an inexpensive device, obviously. Now, I actually went about a month or so without a case on my iPhone 13 Pro, and it generally held up well. I have a few small dents and dings in the stainless that you might be able to see. It's sort of rough to the touch. But besides those minor imperfections and the usual hairline scratches in the polished finish that are common from normal use, this phone has held up well. And I've dropped it more than a few times, with and without a case, on wood floors, on concrete, just about from every height too. Though I'll always prefer to have a case on my devices. And the case I've personally been using for the last 4 or 5 months now nonstop has been this ultra slim one from PHNX. Not just because they were kind enough to sponsor this video, but because I genuinely believe they offer a great product that I've been using and will continue to use on my iPhone. PHNX makes cases for minimalists, those of us like me who still want some protection, but who don't want the phone to be shrouded in a thick hunk of rubber. PHNX cases are sleek and slim and add really no extra bulk at all. That's what I like most. You won't even notice it on the phone for the most part, until you drop it and breathe a sigh of relief knowing that the case did its job. They're precision cut to give you that perfect fit around the corners, edges, cutouts, and buttons, and you've even got a little extra protection around the camera lenses and along the screen. PHNX cases come in black and matte black as well for a stealthier look, and this frosted white, which, like I said, is what I've been using on my phone pretty much this whole time, and it's held up really well. The case has no tears, no cracks, no discoloration of any kind, or even any marks. It's been the perfect complement to my iPhone 13 Pro. If you're looking for a slim, minimal case that still offers proper protection, check out PHNX cases at the link down below. There's a 20% off coupon too if you're interested. And thanks so much again to PHNX for sponsoring this video. So one of the new standout features of the iPhone 13 Pro was the display, mainly the addition of 120 Hz, a first first for any iPhone. Now, the idea of an ultra-responsive and silky smooth, high refresh rate screen isn't new at all, and is not specific to the iPhone either. In fact, plenty of sub-$400 Android devices have offered this particular feature for years. So it really was a catch-up feature, in my opinion. Something long overdue, but it is something I notice and appreciate in my day-to-day usage. Touches and taps feel more responsive, the phone feels smoother and quicker. It was a great add, but I'm not going to pretend like Apple shouldn't have brought this to the phone 1 or 2 years ago. They obviously should have. Beyond that, I found the viewing experience with the iPhone 13 Pro to be generally pretty good. I actually think this phone offers the brightest display overall. It's particularly good outdoors and in direct sunlight without the need of any additional brightness boost. But one thing I would like to see in the future is a bit more control over the display color profile. I think Apple's displays could be a bit more colorful, for example, more saturated, or at least I would like that. But you can't make any tweaks or adjustments to how the screen looks, aside from True Tone, which I never use. Fortunately, it's still a stellar OLED display as it is, and resolution-wise, the awkward 2532 by 1170 is plenty sharp for this size, 6.1 inches. Overall, Apple's display on the iPhone 13 Pro, especially now paired with high refresh rate, is still a top-tier feature and selling point for this specific device, but I don't necessarily think it's the best overall display when you consider color, contrast, or even resolution. The S22 Ultra, for example, I think beats out the iPhone 13 Pro in all of those categories. The out loud listening experience, though, on the iPhone is something no other smartphone can match, in my opinion. The dual speaker setup that Apple delivers here is the best combination of loud, crisp sound with enough bass to get the point across, all while still retaining perfect overall quality. And if I'm listening to anything out loud, music, a YouTube video, a podcast, I want to be listening to it on an iPhone. That's just been my experience, having tested dozens and dozens of other devices over the years. So when we talk performance on an iPhone, and really most flagship devices nowadays, Android included, it's really hard to gauge an increase in speed year over year, or improvements to the overall performance. And that's been my experience with this phone too. Yes, Apple's A15 Bionic is the fastest and most powerful processor they've ever made, but do I notice that day to day? No. Is it a huge difference over the iPhone 12 Pro or even the 11 Pro? Again, no, not really. I honestly don't think specs or speed boosts can even be a selling point for the iPhone anymore. It really only matters if you're 3 or 4 or 5 years behind. At that point, you are going to see some improvements, but year over year, the difference is marginal at best. The thing I think Apple has spent more time focusing on is just the overall software optimization, making iOS feel faster across every device, new and old. And what you pay for in an iPhone isn't really the processor or the performance necessarily, but more so the support, the multi-year iOS updates. The fact that Apple still gives the latest iOS to the nearly 7-year-old iPhone 6S, you just don't see Samsung, for example, pushing out Android 12 for the S7. I know that this iPhone 13 Pro is going to be supported by Apple for 6 or 7 years, probably even longer than that. It is one of the few pieces of tech that could genuinely be considered a solid long-term investment. And I think it's also that long-term support and emphasis on iOS optimization that has kept a lot of people from upgrading their smartphones more frequently nowadays. Those are just my thoughts on that, but obviously this iPhone 13 Pro has been flawless day to day with everything I throw at it, at least from a speed and performance and app-based perspective. I have, though, experienced some strange connectivity issues that I want to mention. So from time to time, my iPhone 13 Pro gets hung up, and it doesn't matter if I'm on Wi-Fi or cellular, or if I'm at home or on the go. There's been a multitude of instances where the phone just doesn't seem to think it's connected to the internet, and I'll have to switch it into airplane mode for a second and then switch it back. And suddenly it's all better again. It could happen with a YouTube video or on Twitter or Safari. It's not app specific, it's not network specific, it's not even location specific. I haven't really been able to figure out the issue, even after reboots and a couple of software updates. It's not often enough to be a serious issue, and maybe I'm overreacting, but I don't remember my iPhone 12, for example, having such consistently inconsistent connection issues. So it's a little weird, and I definitely wanted to mention that. One thing that's been consistently good on my iPhone 13 Pro has been the battery life. Now, I genuinely do push my phones to the limit each day, And you can see that I'm running this phone down to the ground and back up again within a 16 or 18 hour span. And that's okay though. I'm generally a heavier user on my iPhone on a normal day, and the iPhone 13 Pro gives me at least 10 to 12 hours of screen on time with no issues. This is far and away the longest lasting iPhone I've used. And I also think part of that has to do with how I'm taking care of the battery this time around. Between iOS's charging optimization settings and my use of wireless chargers that charge up more slowly, I still have 99% battery health after 6 months now. That hasn't happened to me on previous iPhones, and it actually isn't uncommon for me to be sitting at 90% battery health or less after 1 year of use. So altogether, I think I'm not only taking care of the battery better this time around, but I'm also getting more out of the battery life as well. And while I do still have a horrendous battery pack for emergency situations, I don't really rely on it. So last but not least, we definitely have to talk about the cameras on the iPhone 13 Pro. Now, out of everything, this is what Apple spent like a majority of their time showing off when this phone launched. And I still think the iPhone 13 Pro is at least a top 5 or top 3 smartphone camera overall. There's a lot that this phone does right. Video-wise, I think no one can top what Apple offers. I would rather film any given video using an iPhone from probably the last 2 or 3 years than any other Android device. Sorry, but it's true. For just everyday pictures, I don't doubt that most people simply pull out this phone, quickly snap a pic, and then put it away. That's what I do. Personally, I don't really mess around with any of the fancy settings or manual controls. I don't even utilize a good chunk of the camera stuff day to day. But in the camera app, Apple doesn't necessarily offer the most robust or feature-packed setup compared to some Android devices, for example. So that's something to consider. Samsung definitely pushes the limits with capabilities and shooting modes and features. Google has pushed the limits with software stuff. Still, I've taken fantastic pictures with this phone over the last 6 months, and while I don't think it's the outright best, it is still a fantastic camera setup. The iPhone 13 Pro, to me, has always been a little duller with its shots. Realistic, sure, similar to the Pixel, but not as punchy or colorful or as eye-catching. That's okay though. Detail-wise, the iPhone shines best in portrait mode, I think. That's where you can see every little speck and spot, which is great. But the main lens, I think, lacks a little bit of detail from time to time compared to some of the other phones. Night mode is absolutely where this phone has improved the most over, say, the iPhone 12 Pro. And while I still think there's some room for improvement sometimes, this phone can literally see in the dark. I don't doubt that the iPhone 13 Pro has an endless amount of other camera features and pro settings that people will utilize that'll allow them to get way more out of this setup than I ever could. But for me, these are the pictures and videos I've taken with this phone over the last 6 months, and I've been really happy with the results. There are some things I miss from other phones. Super zoom is fun, the Pixel's magic eraser is really useful, but the iPhone does have its own great setup too. I think the best way to describe the iPhone 13 Pro honestly is that it is another iPhone. Over the last 6 months, nothing has stood out to me as being the feature that makes this particular iPhone 13 Pro great, or any other thing that really influences a person to upgrade. The iPhone 13 Pro is more just a refinement of probably the last couple Pro iPhones that have all been great, but that have also been pretty similar. With that being said, the iPhone can't remain this way forever, in my opinion. It's probably time for Apple to make some more substantial and significant changes, whether that be the design, the features, the capabilities, the software, probably a little bit of everything. I'm a relatively happy iPhone user in general, but one who certainly recognizes how stale the iPhone has become, particularly over the last 2 or 3 years. So while I'll continue to use this 13 Pro for a while, I'm also eager for something new, and I hope Apple might deliver that soon. So those are my thoughts on the iPhone 13 Pro after about 6 months of usage. If you guys have an iPhone 13 yourself, let me know how your experience has been in the comments down below. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.